So, welcome back to the Renewables Podcast. Before we get into the conversation today, we just want to touch on some products from our sponsors at Proteus. And I'm going to start, Sam, with this SPD that they've got. Now, with these, you can mount them straight onto the bus bar. You don't need to have an overcurrent protected device for them, which is super handy when we're limited for space. And we're trying to combine a smaller renewables board maybe with some EPS circuits. There's a lot of uses for these. They're absolutely fantastic. We've been using them for a good few months now, not that long out on the market. So yeah, absolutely fantastic that Proteus are looking after us as installers. And you've got another range of products over there.
I have, yeah. I've got the coloured Henley blocks, or 100 amp link blocks, as some people call them. And gone are the days. I'm a bad contractor for using the black ones for so long, the Bakelite ones, because you try and knock one of these top knockouts out and it basically shatters the full thing. And I'm guilty enough to say that I didn't know these existed. So we started using these now, and they're absolutely fantastic. Solid. You've got the little blanks in here as well. So if you don't use one of the terminals, you can blank it off or just slide it out when you do need to use it. They're fantastic, and obviously they're all coloured as well, so that you know exactly the phase colour and the colour of the cable or the phase that's going into it. So yeah,
even the
pieces.
functional earth, or the Cranis collection as it is called, in pink. And they work with the 3mm Allen keys, which is consistent through the range of the mains tails isolators as well. So they've got us at heart, I think, as installers. You're not messing around with different screws and heads. Another fantastic range of equipment to tie in with the bi-directional RCBOs, which is obviously the leading product Proteus have got at the minute. And they've had that for a long time, which is really helping us again as renewables installers. And that's one of the reasons that we're so happy to be working with Proteus on this show. But without any further ado, let's get back to the chat.
Because unless it's commercially, because it's just a no-brainer now, because people are seeing the benefit of having a tariff that can support your property during this time of year, like we're filming this and recording this in January, where your solar isn't really doing an awful lot, but you've got the ability to charge the battery up during a cheap tariff window and then discharge it back to the house and still make an impact on your bills. Whereas beforehand, you would just be sat there waiting for the sun to come out, to make a difference in your bills. So I think 3.68 it still serves a purpose. I think with smaller installations, obviously people are limited on what size DNO connections they can get.
I was going to say, do you not also think sometimes it's to do with the applications?
Yeah, I do. I think we've seen the DNO kind of relax some of this stuff with some of these G99 fast track applications, where you still need to pre-apply, but it's more 10 working days than 45 working days. And I think now most customers over the time period that these things have been installed see the benefit of having a larger inverter. I always describe it as like if you had a bottle upside down, you've got the neck of the bottle and you kind of want that to be as wide as you can. If you have a little 3.68 neck of your bottle, but you've got 30 kilowatt hours of storage or big solar PV system into that, you're still limited by that little bottleneck. So now people want to have a larger bottleneck or power module or inverter so that they can withdraw power from their solar quicker, from the batteries quicker, but also load the battery quicker, because they're also charging their electric vehicle during that 4 or 5 hour window, charging their or running their air source heat pump, or doing all these different things to make use of that 5p, 7.5p tariff.
Yes.
Because electricity outside of that is obviously more expensive. We're up at 25 to 30 pence usually now. So I think the days of 3.68 being the most popular are definitely numbered, if not already gone. But I think now we've moved to more of the 5 and 6 kilowatt era.
I think more 6 in the UK, actually, I'm finding.
Yeah.
From what we sold through to start off with Calidus, it was all 6s. Whereas in Ireland, it is like all 5s. They won't go past a 5. They won't go below it. It's got to be a 5.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's really, some of them are really. It's really interesting to understand the different complexities behind locations, and then you've got Northern Ireland. They are still very much a 3.68 market. But that's because they want a quick turnaround in terms of, and they've very openly admitted into it, where it's like, we want to do the install quick. We don't want to rush around on the paperwork. But then you have got those installers in Ireland that still will wait for those 5 or 6 on DNOs.
Yeah. I wonder if the 6 kilowatt popularity is, from memory, I think the fast track is 32 amps.
It is.
Which, if you're going to go for 32 amps, you might as well go for 6 kilowatt than the 5 kilowatt, I suppose. Obviously, if you step up to an 8 kilowatt inverter, you're going above that 32 amp threshold. So I wonder if it's kind of, I mean, if you offered a 7 kilowatt inverter, people would probably go for that.
The sweet spot.
So,
with yours though, can you, if we wanted to have that bigger power, you could have 2 stacks next to
100%.
this output to cover the whole.
Yeah. So basically, if you had, if you did 2 5s, it would be a 10 kilowatt system. Again, it goes back to like the product is there, it's in the warehouse, but why put it into the hands of people too quickly and give them too much choice? So the single phase is, it's been tried, tested, perfect. We're on a roll. That's why then we entertained the 3 phase this week on Monday, and obviously then 3 phase will launch in Ireland, in the UK, and that consists of a 5, 8, 10, and 12 kilowatt. Again, it's double the PV input, and then you can run multiple. You can run parallel. So
yeah. So I really want to touch on the corrosion value on this.
How far from the beach can we put it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So
yeah,
and I all would say to anyone that's listening is you really need to deep dive into the warranties of other brands. So you will find that the statutory brands on the market could be anywhere between 500 meters, 700 meters away from a coastal line property. Sorry, a coastal line. Ours is 300 meters currently.
Okay.
However, we continuously test it and are pushing the boundary. So I think we had it at like 350 before Christmas, and then R&D are like, no, you can go to 300 now. And I'm like, can it come down a bit lower? Now, obviously, it can still be installed past 300 meters, but again, that's an advisory that we would then say to the installer, we advise you to put it into a protected casing. But I think we are the only one that is that close to the coastal line. Now, we've had like Corey at OY Electrical who's gone completely rogue, and he's like, oh, can I do this really cool video? It's like on this yacht island mooring place. And I was like, go on then. And then he's like, I'm going to install it outside. I was like, it's like 45 centimeters from Corey, he went, well, I'm going to tell everyone we're going rogue. I'm like, well, yeah, because like we don't advise that, and we don't want to start having this case on our hands.
I think he has put that into an enclosure though.
Oh yeah, because it was like a 10 o'clock at night call, and I was like, you told me it was going in an enclosure, and he's like, oh yeah, but I changed my mind. I was like, no, I got this signed off because I need it in an enclosure.
Yeah.
So he was like, no, cool, I'll do that. It's fine, it's not a problem. And he is a really good guy, and we've had some other people do various little bits of support for our brand, and I think, I would like to continuously push it, because I think it's got the extreme to do so.
Yeah, and to be honest, you wonder why this hasn't been more of this. Well, it might just be that, more of these installs are now going in across lots of different brands, but why this hasn't been more of a problem, because famously we're an island. So we are surrounded by coastal areas. And I'll quickly tell you a story of a company that I worked for as an employee. And this company was based on the coast, and should have known better. And I was just a humble apprentice at the time, doing what I was told. But we put solar PV onto a property, and it was literally, you could see the beach. So we were very, very close to the beach. And the company took a lot of care to put the weight on the system, because it was near the coast and so quite windy, but didn't take as much care to check the corrosion value of the fixings for it. So basically within 3 months, the fixings had basically been eaten through by the corrosion, and these panels were just flying in the wind. So for me, after that, I've always been very conscious of that, and careful when I'm fitting panels to properties. But the thing that didn't dawn on me was, now that we've got this PAS document, PAS 63100, that came out, that basically said fit batteries outside, was that the same effect could happen on a battery storage unit if it's a metal enclosure, which they are, because of what the PAS document says that the battery modules have to be protected by. So last thing you want is to see a great big dirty hole in the middle of your battery, see the cells, because the salt has basically eaten through it. So I feel like this is going to become more of a problem over the next 5-6 years, because more of these systems are going in, because this area of renewables is getting more popular with solar and battery. And we've also been told now, quite rightly in my view, to try and push these systems outside.
I agree.
Or in different areas. And so that either means having to protect a system with an enclosure, or choose a system that can handle the corrosion in that area.
We've got Corey running that test bed now, haven't they?
Let us know.
The cover off. If it was still there in 5 years, you can get that distance down to 35 centimeters, never meters.
So I've got a thing that I quickly printed off about a C5 corrosion value, and this is just information for people out there. So a C5 corrosion is industry, and this is kind of where this is affected. Industry and coastal areas with high humidity and aggressive atmosphere, constant condensation and heavily polluted atmosphere. The C5 class includes materials that are highly susceptible to corrosion and that require special protection to prevent corrosion. So there's quite a lot in this that I had a quick read of beforehand, and it's basically saying that the type of materials that are used to encase battery storage systems, like steel and all the rest of it, need to be adequately protected from corrosion, because ultimately they will just corrode if they haven't got that level of correct.
You'll find a lot of them on a lot of other friends on the market between like a C3, C4 rating. So they pass to the extent, but obviously they pass to the extent, but you've got to be 700 meters away or 800 meters away. And what I don't think a lot of, because no one actually highlights a C5 actually, or a C rating. I don't know any brands that actually highlight their C rating. I'd love to find them out.
Well, I had a look before this chat to see if I could, just some of the brands that I fit, not because I wanted to call them out, but I was worried that a bit like, oh God, what happens if we have one of these jobs that's close to the coast? But I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll probably have it.
In the warranty, they will have it.
Yeah, within there somewhere, but it's not out there. And whether that's just because it's never really been a big talking point, or the fact that they maybe don't want it to be known to
it's hidden.
There's a problem.
It's basically like if you tomorrow installed a brand 300 meters from a coastal line property and you unboxed it and put it on and commissioned it, and it failed, you will not be liable. You will not. You'll be at fault for that warranty because you didn't read it. And I suppose that is true to one degree. It could be classed as misleading. How many manufacturers can give you every single USP on a brand? But I think it's also wise that then the distributor should be educated as well as on top. Like the amount of people that I know that they have that relationship with their installer. Where's the install happening? Oh, it's going there. And then it should be able to go, well, I'm just double check. But it is one of those things because your warranty would fail. And what would that happen for you as an installer? And what would happen?
It'd be expensive, wouldn't it? Wouldn't be very pleasant.
It'd be expensive, and it would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Because I always say this to my customers, because quite often I think you're in the same ballpark, Mark, is that we're never trying to compete with companies that are the cheapest out there, because to be honest, it's a lost leader. And when I talk to people about the PAS document, customers about the PAS document and loads of other bits that we include because we feel it's right for that customer, is that you are hiring us as your installation company because we have taken the time to research the rules, the regs, but also the best guidance notes out there about how these things should be installed. We've had a look at the right system for you and all of that. If you wanted to buy a system just to throw on your wall and hope it works, go to Amazon, go to
Alibaba.
Yeah, go to all these sorts of places and try and find something. But you're coming to us as a professional company to fit you a system professionally, but also to spec the products, to spec the products based on location, but also based on what it can do. You know, if backup's important, it might send you down this road rather than that road. But ultimately, if you're close to the coast and the system's going, you know, in an exposed location, then there's, you know, unless other brands have a C5, there's not actually really that many that could compete with that, because ultimately there's going to be a dirty great hole in the middle of that battery at some point, or, you know, a different battery at some point, because I've seen what it does to solar fixings, never mind, you know, basically a block of
But then doesn't that just go back to where it's like from the beginning of this conversation, it's all about education. And and if you as installers are armed with the right tools for that job, then you don't have those customer service issues.
Yeah, well, I'd love this corrosion value to be creep back and back and back and back. So I'm going to add a bit of pressure to your R&D department as well. So get
it closer.
Literally, I'm on it.
Come on,
like,
150 meters. Here we go.
There's a few A&Bs that I'd quite like to put some battery storage outside.
Yeah.
Does this have a gateway with it? Just or is it EPS?
So the gateway is actually built in. So so there's no extra gateway, or like a lot of them do. So listen, you can have full home backup. It's like anything. It's educating the client again. If you're going to have 4 TVs on your dishwasher, washing machine, and so forth, the electricity is going to drain a lot quicker. The energy, sorry. So you can have a sub panel even if you wanted to, and you could have specific and essential loads. Because let's face it, I mean, as a country, we don't have a broken grid system. We don't, and the power cuts are few and far between. Whereas opposed to Ireland, they're suffering. For the last 5 days, there's, I think, still over 100,000 people.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's
that stuff.
Crazy, but it was that happened literally just before Christmas as well. Some of my team at Western Solar have no energy still. They've got my portable power systems to get them by, which is brilliant. And luckily, Shane, the MD, he does actually have a battery, so he's okay. But yeah, it's just, you can choose where you want your energy to go. The whole idea and concept of a battery in someone's home or commercial property is you have the power to do what you want with it. So if you want to choose those entry points wisely for Wi-Fi to keep the kids quiet, which would be at the top of my list, then you can do that, you know? Like we had a commercial project with the RTR group. They're based in Essex. And I was like, what are your essential loads? And he's like, well, my essential loads is like, I want the lighting for the warehouse. I want the electricity for my server. And he says, dare I say it, but I want the air conditioning because the women are like menopausal. And I was like, yep, not a problem. We can organise that for you. Yeah. But that's it. He's like, I don't need it for everything. I physically don't need it for everything. So I think it all depends on your client, and it goes back to that education, and it goes back to what would you advise or what did they want, you know?
Yeah.
So go on.
Go on, sorry.
All I was going to say was, I suppose that's the distinction between what sort of system you choose and how important that whole home backup is, and whether or not you can educate them away from that. I'm just having a look on here. So like the inverter capacity on the off-grid side basically matches the inverter's capacity, which is quite standard. So you got a 5 kilowatt, the 5 kilowatt power module, or the 6 kilowatt power module. So basically, the 6 kilowatt power module will deliver 6 kilowatts into that home if there is a power cut, and it switchover time is 10 milliseconds. So that is you don't even see the light.
Don't even see the light. Obviously, it will be more as you're running parallel as well. If you had parallel system,
okay,
you know, so it's basically you're doubling that what you can do with that battery. So you do have that scenario as well. And obviously 3-phase is a bit different slightly as well.
So that would just need wiring into a domestic consumer unit, and if there was a power cut, it would just take over the supply in full, and we don't need a gateway, because that's a big time save for us.
Well, and expense as well.
Yeah.
It's a massive expense, gateways, and a lot of them still have gateways. For us as well, I know this sounds really, I don't know if you have it with the brand that you install, but our power sensor is no CT clamp on the single phase. So it's wired in, when you go to our 3-phase, CT clamp is required. But again, like even down to the power sensor, we supply that. And that's just a Chint power sensor. It's a recognised and well-known brand. That's who we negotiated with. So
no, that's really good because we've just done a few systems this last couple of weeks, and the gateways, they always take a bit of time, and it's often a faff because you're working around original switch gear and there's the space for it as well. So that's actually really interesting for me, Aaron, that can do off-grid. I'm not aware of another product that does it like that, to be fair.
Yeah, so we've got the off-grid scenario, like the actually going back to Corey, he basically was the one who done an off-grid system. So which I think that drops in like a week's time or whatever, or 2 weeks' time. So that you'll have a look at that scenario. But we've got loads of different multiple scenarios. We've got scenarios of, if you've got that existing PV and that Solix inverter and you've got that retrofit style, or you have got that singular inverter that you want there and it just requires another power sensor to our power sensor and battery. I think a lot of people now are thinking to themselves, batteries have come down in price. And, a lot of people sometimes do want to just have battery storage with the tariff rates. And I think that's why we designed the way that we've designed this. I mean, like my iPhone 15 is actually longer.
Super thin, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 15 centimeters. So I think the only one that's like nearest to us is like the Tesla Powerwall 3.
It's like 190, I think, something like that.
190.3. Just saying. So the Powerwall 3. So it's 15 centimeters. So it's really ultra thin. And I know it sounds really random, but basically how the design came about was it was because we had so much market research. Like, if we put a battery down the side, how am I going to get my bins out? And I know that sounds really silly, but actually you don't really think about it until that happens. So it was almost like we wanted it to be accessible for anywhere around your surrounding home. Garages, the wall. I mean, look, I'm not a massive fan of them being installed, any battery being installed in loft spaces these days, and I strongly believe in that. But there was a battery that was installed, but as it was down near the eaves, but he needed 15 kilowatts worth of storage, he could only go up to literally this height. So it allowed him to then just parallel the extra 2 modules, and so he's still gaining his 15 kilowatt hour battery capacity, as opposed to normally you'll see a 3-stack system, and that's on a lot of our marketing. It's a 3-stack, but you can stack it higher. You can stack it up to a 20 kilowatt hour system in one complete, but that's the beauty of it. It can go up, it can go to the side, it can fit under certain scenarios. Like when you were saying about if a client doesn't have solar and then buys into solar, you 100% know that they're going to go down the route of an EV charger next, an electric car. And it's just like, I foresee this. Like, my daughter gets so annoyed that I bang on about that light's on in the house all the time. Like, I'm just one of the world's worst. But in theory, she's 11. In theory, by the time that she knows how to drive, it most likely will be in an electric car, or I'm hoping it will be in one sense. And so, I've got a 10 kilowatt hour battery in my house, but I will probably need additional storage. I also feel like these sort of batteries are now what I would class as the next utility product. So if you're investing in this product, okay, you can't take the solar panels with you, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't physically take your battery to your next home.
Becomes infinitely easier if there's no gateway to take out the equation as 100%. Well. It's like more plug and play. And the bins thing, that's why my battery system is in my converted garage. I much preferred it to be outside.
Yeah.
But the bins wouldn't fit past the one I selected.
What have you got?
I've got to give energy all in one.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's the thing. I think it's finding that, like, there are certain brands that can go outside, like the SIG and other brands on the market, but they're a lot more chunkier. So it's then again planning out where you would put it for the client, that it's not going to obstruct or affect their life with the kids' bikes, or the lawnmower, or like you said, the bins. So we try to think a bit of that on our feet with that. I think the design, like the color, I think there's a lot of white product out on the market, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think when you've got it outside, especially, I mean, I have a cleaner every week. I can't send her out to clean a white product every week. Should spend a whole hour on it. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, that design for us was a massive thing.
So what we mentioned about our annoyance of brands leaving us behind on innovation and all this sort of stuff. And there's, for me, there's two types of innovation. There's the innovation of the product, so extra things we can do, extra wires we can put into it to do different things, extra battery capacity and all the rest of it. But the other side, and arguably the most important side, is more on like the integration with different tariffs and demand side response and AI backed features and all that sort of stuff. So is there any plans to do any sort of demand side response schemes with any suppliers or direct tariff integrations like Octopus Agile and all the rest of it?
So there is a conversation, and I can't say but there is a deal with an integrated utilities provider.
Right.
So that's that one. I mean, actually, we have a really cool feature which is only running in America at the moment. I suppose they need it more, but we have a feature which is Storm Guard. So basically, if there's a projected or a planned storm coming, it will rapidly charge up the battery, any remaining capacity. It would give it a full storage. Now, again, it's like anything. These features and firmwares, we're more than happy to bring into the market, but we do have a really good research team. And do we need it necessarily? Like if we launched this in South Africa, yes, we would need it. We would need that rapid battery charging because it's got such a broken grid. Do we need it in the UK? Not necessarily, but it's things that we could always look to evolve. Things like MPPTs, bigger single phase inverters, like you mentioned. People have also said, you're going to do maybe an 8 kilowatt battery capacity, like some of our other competitors do. What other product lines have you got bringing out? Have you got micro inverters? We have got micro inverters, optimizers, or an air source heat pump. We don't have an intention to bring out an air source heat pump, just by the way, but what we have got is we are SG ready integrated. So most of the leading brands on the market would be SG ready. So Weissman, Nimbe, Bosch. I think the only one that I don't know of that's SG ready at the moment is Mitsubishi.
So is this smart grid or what?
Yeah, so it's a smart grid code. So basically what it does is if you've got one of the up-to-date air source heat pumps that are SG ready, which like most of these brands which I've just said, we have no intention. We're not an air source heat pump company. We've always been electronics. So we've got no intention to make it. But we want to make sure that we give that offering that it can be integrated into an ecosystem. So it actually can integrate into our own ecosystem. Okay. Just like, in fact, our portable power systems, if you had one of them knocking around in your garage and you were going camping at the weekend, you can actually integrate that into our system as well. It sees the whole thing. Optimizers can work as well from other brands, but you still do need to have your own application for that manufacturer. And then we've got our own EV charger launching this year as well. But I think it goes back to, and don't hold me on the date, but it goes back to not saying everything too soon and making sure that we have that guarantee of when the product line comes out so that we don't again let that client down.
I think the optimizer thing is something we've spoken about at length on different podcasts, isn't it? About the progression of solar PV and the safety element of it. 'Cause it's a little bit like the Wild West with solar installation at the minute and the protection and the rapid shutdown and all the rest of it. I think any brand, and again, this goes back to the innovation thing, where I feel like a lot of established brands can kind of let us down a little bit in terms of not bringing out their own optimizer system, because a lot of us installers can see the what's coming down the track in terms of safety, and it only takes one insurance company to go, we've had too many claims on house fires caused by dodgy solar PV. What can we do? Ooh, rapid shutdown looks good. And then suddenly they have to try and rush something out after that rather than helping us to put these things in place. You've said, Mark, numerous times, something I really like is that we haven't got long to really affect how solar is installed over the next 5-10 years. Like we're in that early adoption phase. What we do now affects how solar is going to be installed over the next 10 years, because when that rapid adoption phase takes hold, it is going to be twice as hard, 3 times as hard to get people to change how they're fitting solar. Whereas if we implement these things now and actually consider corrosion values, optimizers, all these different sorts of things, how we're backing up properties, when that really takes hold, it can then be installed in the correct way. It's not going to be exactly the same over the next 10 years, but the fundamentals will be there. And I think the optimizer question is something that is kind of missold and misunderstood now, but I feel will come to market very strongly, and we'll look back on fitting solar without optimizers purely for the rapid shutdown element as ludicrous.
Drives me mad on YouTube content where you'll get a comment, why have you installed optimizers? That's such a waste of money for the customer. There's no shading, no components that are going to go wrong. And you're like, yeah, but that could also stop their house burning down.
Yeah.
What's the value in all of that equation? And I disagree with a lot of the things around performance and stuff, because panel tolerances, Stuart Cato explained this to me, degrade at different rates. And if you've optimized the system, you kind of hedge your bets over 20, 25 years to mitigate that as well. So there's still the performance side, even when there is no shading. And if a manufacturer comes out with optimizers, and SolarEdge is one that you install a lot of, it's less commissions for us. We use Tiger T, or however you say it, but it's another system to commission, another system to build alongside your inverter manufacturer. It's more time on site dealing with another manufacturer. If something goes wrong, it's much easier if it's all in one ecosystem. So I think it makes a lot of sense for a brand like Anker Solix to have the EV chargers, to have the optimizers, to have all of that. And you're dead right with the heat pumps. That's a different thing. We don't talk about
I think there's always, like, with us as a brand, it's like there's never a no on the table. It starts with a maybe, and then it goes to a yes. Probably because they have enough of me, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it is like that. And I think, like, and also a lot of my team from different parts of Europe and China, they have literally supported, been on the ground since we started our project for the UK and Ireland. And for us, it's like the information and the wealth that they've gathered, because we've still got research, but that everyone goes, we want the 8 kilowatt single phase, or we think that optimizer, or I don't like that feature on the app as much. Like, you need to hear that information. That allows us to not be complacent.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that is where I think a lot of brands start out like that in the early days, and then as they grow, they start not necessarily not listening, but they're busy doing a lot of other things because they're growing into bigger companies, busier. So hopefully, as Anker, I'm sure, will be very successful in this area, because it looks like a fantastic product. Hopefully, that drive to still engage with installers, I don't think you can ever do wrong there. And yes, it might cost money rather than be a direct sale. You're not earning money from that conversation. But like we mentioned about the customer support side, it's very hard to quantify how much of a benefit you get from engaging with customers, installers, and hearing their gripes, making the changes. It can be stupid little changes, really small changes on the app. I don't like where that logo is, or that icon. Those little changes reflect, yes, an improvement on the app, but an actual appetite to listen to the people that are using the equipment and that are engaging with it every single day, like a customer who's looking at every single day and being annoyed that they have to press that button and that button and that button to find the information that they want. All that sort of stuff is for I think for big brands that have been in this industry for a while, can be a bit like, oh God, I can't believe they're moaning about that. But for brands that are entering the market, they're the ones that want to push these improvements because they've got to do it.
I also think, like, the installer then really starts to feel like they're valued. Because at the end of the day, we're just wrapping and packing it up. It's gone out from the courier, but you're doing the hard graft. So if you've got these things, these quotas that you want to say, look, I think this could be done here and this could be done there, we'll listen to them.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to hear as installers, and you nailed it there, Sam. I think a big company like Anker coming into this sector, you've got the customer support like Tesla did. They didn't come into the home battery storage system building up customer support and everything. It's there. They've got those battle scars from trying to shift cars for years, and you'll have had that with consumer electronics.
Yeah, 100%.
Some of these other smaller companies that we've had in the UK, which I've got behind massively, been an enthusiastic installer, really promoted those brands, and they were great. But then that growth they go through, then building up that customer support, that back end behind the brand is really difficult for them, and that's where we tend to see them break down. I think we've certainly worn that as a small installing company ourselves. I don't know if you've probably had similar experience.
Yeah, I think we all have over many different brands and many different pieces of equipment. You know, you do get those scars of why are they not listening to us anymore? And there's lots of those out there, and you know, some of them go through a period of that and then re-establish a good working relationship with installers because they realize that they've missed that. But you just hope that some of these brands don't realize that too late, and ultimately, because it's a lot of, you know, us as installers. Anker can do lots of promotion to end users and try and get people to customers to specify Anker, but ultimately, unless they're installing it themselves, it is the installers that are selling this equipment.
Yeah.
And if a customer comes to you wanting an Anker battery, but you always fit brand X, then unless you have had the experience with Anker and you're really positive about it and you're open to trying something new, a lot of the time you're going to be heavily trying to dissuade that customer from fitting that equipment, not because you don't think it's any good, but because it's not familiar. You're not sure if you're going to be able to commission it well. That's why right at the start of this podcast, I wanted to find out about the challenges, because I think it is a challenge, but from the sounds of it, you're going about it the right way with not just trying to push a product to end clients and go, look, you want your install, you need to ask your installer to fit this, you know, make sure you specify this product, is trying to win over the installers to do it, because they are the route to market for every single brand.
I think we've I really did find it on this product line specifically. I did find it relatively easy to go to market because we are a household name brand anyway. But like you said, I think the thing is, it's relationships that you have with your distributors. I have some really honest and frank conversations with them. You know, like Shane Ryan at Western Solar. I'm up religiously at 5 o'clock in the morning. I start my work day at 5 o'clock. Not everyone's the same, but I always feel there's not enough hours in the day for me. So I'm on the phone to him at 5:30. He's running around his warehouse getting kit ready to go out that same day. And we're talking about what we're going to do today and how we're going to get that installer group and how we're going to support that installer group. And now it's the same with David Martini at Calidus and Matthew at Western at Calidus as well. Like all their individual business development managers, I sit and have a one-to-one phone call conversation with them every week. What clients do you need me to call? What clients do you need to introduce me to? Who do I need to reach out to? Do I need to go on site? What other training do you require? Would you like me to send you anything that you need, whether it's brochures or, you know, e-documents and so forth, that I can support you in those sales? You know, I feel like sometimes as a distributor, like when a product is purchased into distribution, it's like, go and sell it now, and there's no help. There is zero help. And that's for them as distributors, but then it's also then a knock-on effect to you as the installer. This is what it needs to be when you start any brand, and that's why we've brought into this company, to build a brand.
Yeah, I think like we've said, it's very easy for you kind of at that tipping point as a new brand, not new brand, but new brand in this industry. Like, say you've got your household name out there, but this is the first product offering from Anker in this home storage sort of area. And I think it can be, it can fall this way or that way as to whether or not it gets a good reputation or a bad reputation. But that is where, depending on what happens now, sets that trajectory for what happens over the next 10 years. And so getting that right, I think you do need that extra level of control, because you need to be choosing who's installing it, make sure they're doing it right, because you don't want customers, bad mouthing it online. You don't want installers bad mouthing it online. But I think one of the key things for me was that it's not being rushed out for like the gold rush.
No,
era,
no, not at all.
which is good because that means that there's been some serious thought.
We could have literally had 7 distribution deals. Literally, with so many of the companies that are leading in the market, but we chose. I had the monopoly of choosing my partnerships, and I had really good relationships with both companies previously, so I knew what I was going into bed with. You know, I knew that I wasn't going to give someone a product and that they weren't going to support it in the way that I felt it needed to be supported. And that's why, like, any distribution deal that we have, like, it's very important for us to do our due diligence and for them to also do it. Like, I'm shocked the amount of people that don't test batteries beforehand. You know, like, for me, like, now a lot of installers, because they have been so scarred, are actually physically testing the battery out in their own home first before they decide to confidently put it in the hands of their installer group and into the end user. Like, that's how bad it's become.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to change that mindset.
Yeah, that's what we, as an installer, that's what I did when we first came in. I went through a few different options in my own home to decide what range we were going to offer our customers. And you can see why, having spoken to the likes of you and Dan and Stuart and the issues that you've had in the past with things. And yeah, it's exactly the chain of thought you have. You don't want to be dealing with the service afterwards. And we've been talking about us picking up the slack when manufacturers aren't supporting the end consumers. But the other way around, if the installers aren't delivering high quality systems to those consumers and they subsequently go out of the business, these companies and manufacturers end up picking up the weight there. And one of the brands we install, I know that they've got a problem at the minute with one of their larger installers who put a lot of these systems in, subsequently going out of business when they haven't done the work to the required standard. And they're then left picking up the pieces around that because they don't want a bunch of unhappy end users slating the brand on the internet.
How do they resolve it? And
that's the difficulty. I can totally understand why you are taking those gentle, slow steps and making sure that that's right, because you can build a problem for yourself in 2-3 years where this company might put thousands of systems in, and all of a sudden those calls start coming back.
Yeah.
Jesus, we've got to sort this out.
Yeah. We've been quite lucky because also, like, when you like when you install a product, like your first install, and you might not have ever done any pre-research on the product, probably might not have even followed a step-by-step manual guide, and then it gets to the commissioning stage. You can't commission that system unless we know that you're commissioning that system. It's making sure that before you commission that system, that you have done that Anker Academy. Now, I know you haven't.
No,
And you're due for it.
Busted.
I haven't yet. No,
But
I haven't fitted one yet.
that's the truth of it. When it came to the point of you wanting to install that product, and it's not me, it's really not me or our company putting a barrier in place, but it's making sure that you have followed that step by step. Because actually, when you look at the infrastructure of this system, it's really simple. If you just can't dedicate yourself an hour or an hour and a half over a cup of tea in the evening or even over the weekend to get away from the children just to do those exams, then you're not the right installer for me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and I think again, more companies will, like you said, Mark, they'll get left holding the baby a little bit with a lot of these systems that were sold at mass just to get stock out the door, just box shifting really. And unless they want their brand to be negatively tarnished by the installer network, because none of these systems are a 2-year payback. You know, a lot of these systems that you got to have them in for 10 years or whatever. And so to rely on those installers that are smashing installs out for, very small margins, you're basically relying on nothing going wrong to keep that business going for the long term. Unless those companies are happy to take that risk, they've got to have some control over their installer network. So, so yeah, right. Anker Academy. I've got two.
It's not going to wash with consumers, is it?
Sorry.
If you turn around as a brand and say, "Oh, we're not covering the warranty because they've installed it wrong,"
But then,
but you recommended them, like you approved them.
But then get me on this with the warranties. I think there are some elaborate claims out on the industry at the moment of 12 and 15-year warranties. And if you really do a deep dive in it, it's exactly as the same as a 10-year warranty. It's 6,000 cycles. You know, so it's that marketing spin again. And I think, again, it's this, and you normally find this with the, you know, the early installers that have just come onto the market. They go, oh, well, yeah, but it offers this, this, and this. But deep dive into the warranty, deep dive into what it actually says, because really it's just a marketing ploy.
This one's 10 years.
10-year healthy warranty.
Yeah. And is that cycle based?
Yeah, based on cycles as well.
Right, okay.
I'm one of the worst for falling for the USPs of brands.
Are you?
12 years, this is what it outputs. And then it's Matthew starts reading the data sheets and he's like, well, actually, this, and this, you've got it all wrong.
Yeah, again, I don't proclaim to be technical at all. I know enough over the years to get me by, and that's not my strength. But I do have a really good team around me that make sure that they can support those installers. You know, like Ian, who's our technical support manager for the UK. We've got another person joining in Ireland.
You end up in your own bubbles as installers. I'm certainly in mine, and just busy doing the day job, all the paperwork, the G99s. We've got 3 brands we were reasonably happy with, but my eyes have been opened actually looking at this and chatting with you. And we'll definitely be looking at trying to get on some of this training and become approved installers, because I think there's consumers that I'm thinking of that would benefit from this kind of system. So definitely, if there's anyone else who's listening and watching, maybe they've had their eyes opened as well, because I'm not aware of every product on the market. I'm just not.
No, I'm not.
You don't need to be necessarily, but what I would say is, if you are investing, if you are literally a solar installer and you have a solar company, you need to be going to the solar and storage at least in Birmingham once a year. Or if you are building your brand, you need to be looking at Intersolar, you know, as a standard. Now, don't get me wrong, we are huge in Intersolar and the stand is massive, and it's like my worst nightmare because there's so many halls and it's just a maze. But you don't really get to always enjoy it or see every product. But it's all about having that. Products are constantly moving. Solar panels are constantly moving. Even down to cable is moving now. This is happening in distribution. What I'm noticing now in distribution is they're streamlining, and so they should. They should be streamlining. You know, not everyone. There's enough on the plate for everyone. There's enough food at this table for everyone. It shouldn't have to be that race, that really disastrous race where you've got the same product across 10 different distribution channels.
Yeah, I think protecting margins in what is a very tricky world is something that I'm very keen to see, because ultimately the margin isn't there for the Lamborghinis. It's there for the innovation, the progression of the company, the reinvestment. It probably is there for the Lamborghinis in some cases, but most small to medium companies are there. They're reinvesting that profit into more marketing or more training or hiring or expanding into a unit and all these sorts of things. That it's not there for greed, it's there for expansion and protection. And something that I've thought a little while of doing a proper full YouTube video on is why a customer should want to spend more money on an install, like not looking for the cheapest one, because of these systems being a 10-year investment. If you're paying the cheapest, the reality is that you're taking a chance that installer isn't going to be there for 10 years. It might be there for 2 years. And then what do? You're into that realm of having to come back to Anker or whatever they've installed to try and get that system, repaired or replaced. So it's a really tricky world. And I don't know if we've mentioned it on the podcast yet, Matt, but we're obviously going to Installer Show very kindly donated a stand for us where we're going to be.
I'll see you there.
We're going to be based there. We're going to be doing interviews there with people. Probably get you on if you want to come and see how the show's doing for you.
Could grill Ian more on the tech front.
Yeah, well, we'll maybe do a
go through the data sheet.
A revisit. Yeah, we'll do a revisit and go into some of the more technical stuff. But that's going to be a really good base. And like you said, I do think now that there's so much tech out there that installers do need to be going out, and it's good fun. You've got a concentration of people that are in the same industry that want to do good jobs in most cases at a show where they're all meeting up, chatting and sharing ideas. And Installer Show is a fantastic one for that, and we'll be there. We're in a really good location as well, aren't we?
We are. They've got a new electric zone, so they've they've got 3 halls now, I think, for Installer Show. I think it's 24th to 26th of June. And they've dedicated a space for renewables and kind of the electrical industry close and amongst each other. So we're right next to the EIC, where I think we've got Milwaukee nearby as well. We've got some of the bigger, I've forgotten the names now, some of these brands I should prepare.
On the tools, on the tools.
On the tools and fixed radio as well are all kind of in and around where we are. So hopefully it should be a good vibe.
No, it'd be great. It'd be great to check in with you on at that show, Aaron. And I mean, was there anything else that either of you two? I've gone through all my questions, and
we've done it a right good coverage, haven't we? I think from the industry and distribution and the product itself.
Yeah.
And if you'll have me, I will definitely be trying to get into the Anker Solix supply.
Yeah, you'll probably be at the academy before him.
Yeah, well, that's it. I'll steal all his customers.
Edit that out.
I'll steal all his customers as well while I'm at it. Why not?
Brilliant.
No, that's great. No, thanks very much for coming on. And if anyone's got any questions or anything about the Anker Solix, then drop them in the comments, and you guys will probably check in on that YouTube video and feel free to jump on any of the questions that come in about the Anker and answer on our behalf. But I'll let you lead out.
Yeah, I'll drop in the description as well, alongside wherever you're watching or listening to this, a link over to the Anker Solix website, so you can go and read about the products, and also to Calidus Wholesale if they're the distributor in
Calidus Wholesale in the UK, Western Solar in Ireland.
I'll pop those in as well, so if you want, you can go and check those out. And just huge thanks to Aaron for coming along to chat with us. Got any questions, as always, drop them in below, and otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.